LearnTorah.ca.
So, Rabbi Sai, this is the first, hopefully, of many shiurim. We'll see what happens. So, the shiur the mimer I picked is Achrei Mos Mem Tes. Say it's a classic. It's called a classic. I mean, people think of this as a classic. But I don't like the word classic because every mimer is a classic. But this is among classics. This is a classic. Said by the Rebbe Rashab in the year Achrei Mos Mem Tes. The mimer was actually first redacted, completely redacted and edited in a proper way in the year Tuf Shin Chaf Beis. On Yud Aleph Nissen, so the Rebbe verbracht, and this mimer was the focus of that verbringen. As we'll see as we get into the mimer deals with largely the union of Tikkun and Tohu, but more specifically with the idea of Ratzah V'Shoiv, which has tremendous implications for our Avodah and the dynamic with which the world is sustained and the dynamic with which we are able to change ourselves and change the world. It's an absolutely fabulous mimer. You are going to hear Gewaltige Chedushim, and these are going to largely be in Hebrew pronunciation. So I don't mind if you laugh at me, okay? My pronunciation is terrible. I'm terrible at language, but anyway, we'll do the best we can. So we'll begin. Begins with the pasuk. I don't know which to use. This is bigger, but this is, I got all my little squirrels and squiggles in here. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe. Achrei Moshe bnei Aaron. Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu after the death of the two bnei Aaron, B'karavasam lifnei Hashem v'yumusu, in coming close before Hashem, and they died. It's a difficult sentence. It would seem, mahu v'yumusu. Why do you need the v'yumusu? Shu miyoser achrei ha'omer kodim achrei mos. It already said achrei mos. We know they died because the pasuk begins with that. What does the Vayamusu, the Vayamusu add? Adds a great deal, no doubt. Ma'hu oid Vayamusu. What do we need the Vayamusu for? What is gained by this? Shu kavla lashon. It's seemingly a superfluous expression. Of course, it's not. Yesh leimer. We could say mizeh from this the ikar chait. Hoyu ma shemesu al yedei hakiruv. A couple of things here. First of all, we associate the passing, the histalkus of the Bnei Aaron with the concept of kiruv, of coming close. It's through the agency of bikuravasam that the Vayamusu is actualized. So somehow or another, the Vayamusu is connected with the concept of Bikuravasam. Question is, exactly what is the sin? Many Meforshim, everyone's familiar with these. There are many explanations, many Meforshim try and explain, what did they do wrong? A common explanation, a popular explanation is they entered the entered the Mishkan while under the influence of alcohol. Another famous common explanation is that they paskened din before their Rebbe. Another is that they came in without the proper begodim. There are many reasons given for what the sin was that was resulted in such a circumstance in this histalkus. Incidentally, interrupt me anytime, okay? I do not mind being interrupted. On the contrary, I welcome it. So the question is, there's a chait here somewhere. What's the chait? The chait is associated with the Bikra Avasam. That much we know. Al Yidei Hakiruv. They died. It's interesting lashon, al yedei hakiruv, by means of, by agency of kiruv. Not the kiruv itself. Kiruv's not a chait. On the contrary, Person it's a wonderful thing to approach God. The higher, the better. The more lofty, the better. Kiruv in and of itself is not a chait. So we do not say that the kiruv is the chait. The kiruv is the source of vayimusu, but rather it's the agency through which the vayimusu occurred. The kiruv in some way is not a proper kiruv. This is what seems to be the point here. V'loi etzem kiruv, not the etzem kiruv. Etzem kiruv is fine. There's no problem. This is it's a wonderful thing, in fact. This is the idea of the double lashon, using the word vayimusu. The chait is associated, then the vayimusu tells us that the chait is attached to the concept of kiruv, the agency of the kiruv. So what it means is that kiruv could bring to misa. It's quite possible that kiruv could lead to death. What is the sin? What's the Rebbe saying here? Does anyone pick up the message? There are people who by way of kiruv, were nostalgic from the world. The Rebbe's going to actually give a couple of examples. Kiruv by itself is not a chait. Do we not find by tzadikim gedolim shemesu bekivrosam laHashem that they were nostalgic. They died from drawing close to Hashem. Kamay misas neshikin, the whole concept of misas neshikin, in this famous case from Idra Rabbah. V'tolosa Saba. These are the three Talmidim of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, who during the duration of his discourse in the Idra, they left. The common lashon is they died. They were nostalgic. The or was so intense that they simply ascended. Hate is not associated. Is not indicated in these cases. So the idea of kiruv itself, even kiruv which could lead to misa, may or may not be a chait. It depends upon the circumstances.
Like lo yirani adam v'chai?
Something like this. We're going to see. Telosa Saba, the three Rabbanim, Shemesu Be'idra, that died in the Idra. Tzarech lahaven, ha'hefresh ben zel. So what's the difference? If no one says of these three Rabbanim, you look in Zohar, if you look in Idra, you will not see a criticism of these Talmidim, of the Rashbi. Here, however, there's something wrong. So say Stalkus is a Stalkus. Well, apparently not. The kiruv of the Bnei Aaron, there was a defect in the way of kiruv, and this is what the Rebbe is hammering away at. Lahavin calls that in order to understand all of this, tzarach lehigdim tchila lahavin klolas ahefresh ben toyu v'tikin. To understand all this, we have to understand the distinction between toyu and tikkun. Everyone knows generally about Toyu and Tikkun. Tikkun, for our purposes, is Atzilus. Olam HaTikkun, the world of correction, the world of rectification. Toyu is an Olam above Atzilus, which is associated with the concept of Shiras HaKelim. And in order to understand the question that the Rebbe is raising here, we have to understand the distinction between Toyu and Tikkun. By Tohu, in the world of Tohu, Tohu literally means chaos. In fact, the world we live in right now, if you think of Golus, if we try and apply adjectives to Golus, there are many adjectives one can come up with. Choshech, Ra. This is a rather interesting world now. Alma de Shikra, call it what you like. It's a very interesting world we live in. But the thing that is absolutely distinctive of Golus, and perhaps the most disturbing facet of Golus, is that it's chaotic. We're going to talk a lot about the avoid of birurim, of refining, of sifting, of separating the holy from the not holy. It's a chaotic situation. And that chaotic situation that we experience here is a direct product of the Shviras HaKelim V'Olam HaToyu. So this has a direct relationship for those of us down here right now. So what's the difference between Tikkun and Toyu? So by Tikkun, I'm sorry, where are we here? L'haven calls that tzarich lehigdim tchila. L'haven calls hefresh bein toyu l'tikin. We have to understand the fundamental, the foundational difference between toyu and tikin. We'll get to details later on. Right now, what is the fundamental quality of toyu that makes it toyu? What is the fundamental quality of tikin that makes it tikin?
You said before, oil of toyu is l'mayla ma'atzilus.
Definitely. Bigger is not better. Bigger is not necessarily better. Quite to the contrary, as we'll see later on. Okay. On the contrary, tzilus is a product of birur of the. It's a birur milamai lamata, but it's those aspects of tohu which are assimilated into tikkun already. So tikkun literally is the product of tikkun itself. We're going to see. The main thing with tohu is there's ribui or, is much or, and limited, diminutive kalim. With tikkun, the rule of tikkun is the other way around. Miyata or ribui kalim. The or is diminutive, it's reduced, and the kalim are capacious. There's large capacity, broad kalim. Now, it's very easy to take this at face value and look at it literally as a quantitative difference. So up there, the main thing is or, and by tikkun, the main thing is kalim. Not quite so simple. The Rebbe says, v'yudua, de'ein ha'kavana b'ribui umiyat. The kavana is not a quantitative flow. By ribui, we don't necessarily mean more, although it is more, and by miut, does not necessarily mean less. These are qualitative terms. In other words, there is something fundamentally different about not only the quantity of the or of toyu over tikkun, but the quality of the or. It's a different kind of or. And there's a fundamental difference in quality over the kind of kalim you're going to find in tikkun and the kind of kalim that you're going to find in toyu. So yes, there's bigger and smaller, and there's more and there's less, but that's not the ikr. The ikr is what is the fundamental nature of these two olamais, and what do we really mean by ribui and miyat with respect to or and with respect to kalim?
Is the difference of the quality a result of the quantity?
No, they're related, but the qualitative differences. On the contrary, the quantitative differences are probably the result of the quality.
They're codependent.
They're codependent, yes. Ribui umiyut. Ribui mamish umiyut. Let's see. V'ein hakavana b'ribui umiyut. Ribui mamish umiyut mamish. We do not mean there's a lot of or over here and there's a lot of kalim over there. Ki im shebetoyu hu ha'or ba'oifen ach legamra. In toyu, we're dealing with a different kind of or. It's an or which is totally, it is different. It's totally distinct. It has its own qualities, its own properties, and it is nothing like the or of tikkun. Ma'or b'tid tikkun. V'chein ha'kelim gam kein ba'oifen acher. Same thing with the kelim. It's not a matter of bigger and smaller. It's a matter of fundamentally different nature, different characteristics, different qualities, and different kavanas, for that matter. So we're talking about two worlds which are very, very distinct from each other. It's not simply a matter of an engineering problem until you adjust the or to the, it's like the microphone, you get too close to it, so you get all kinds of feedback and you hear all kinds of terrible noise. So then you draw it back, so the or is tailored to the keli. That's not this. The nature, the very fundamental nature and the purpose, the tachlis, the kavana of toyu and the kavana of tikkun are distinct. They're related, but they are distinct, as will be explained to me. Hashem. The main thing about tikkun are kalim, umamela nasa tikkun ha'ardes. Tikkun, all of tikkun is tikkun. We call it tzilus olam ha-tikkun. It's not part tikkun, not half tikkun. The whole thing is tikkun. But the key to the tikkun means rectification. The key to the rectification, the key to the perfection of tikkun is the keli. The keli imposes rectification on the or. It is the dominant causal factor for why tikkun is tikkun. It's about kalim. Tzilus is about kalim. God forbid to diminish or. It's like it's like a neshama and guf. You got to have both of them. But the ikar inyan of the concept of tikkun is the keli. So, we're talking about Aris V'Kalim of Toihu, we're talking about Aris V'Kalim of Tikkun. So, what's an or, what's a or, and what's a Keli? Well, the truth is we don't know what they are. Oh, these are metaphors. These are words, they're mishalim. They're very useful, they're very helpful. There are many aspects of physical or that are applicable and make it a good word for us to have some handle on elokus, which is not within the grasp of the human mind, or any created mind for that matter. It gives us a handle, and the same thing is true of kalim, but we have to realize we're dealing with derivatives. We're dealing with words which apply to or reflect something that we can't really know the essence of. Nonetheless, if we can get some kind of an idea using these words, we will have some sense of the dynamic of Toyu and the dynamic of Tikkun. So we have to understand, first of all, the whole meaning of Aris V'Kalim. So the Or V'Keli b'chinas Chesed and Gevura. Aris and Kalim, we can think of in very, very general terms, is Chesed and Gevura. Which is which? Who's the Chesed?
Chesed is Or.
Who thinks Chesed is Or? Who thinks Gevura is Kalim? Who thinks Chesed is Kalim? It's counterintuitive, Rabbi Sai. Chesed is not Or.
It says inside.
That's why I'm asking, because we're going to answer it. But I'm assuming no one's learned the Mimer yet, okay?
You could think that the Keli is allowing there to be go through, so it's even a Chesed. That's where you're going.
That's where we're going. Chesed is not, Or is not Chesed. Chesed is extension, it's giving, it's hashpah. The nature of Or is not hispashtus. Could have fooled me. That's what we think of Or as. Or is as hispashtus. Hispashtus from the sun. Physically, Or is hispashtus. And this is where the metaphor of Or breaks down. We cannot use Or. We cannot use the word Or. We cannot use the mashal of physical Or to account for everything we want to in terms of Gilui Elokus. Doesn't work, and it does not, specifically does not work in this case. We have multiple mishalim which deal with the whole concept of Elokus. The Rebbe is going to bring these here. Close to Hefeshben Aris Kalim. Do you do the Or V'Keli Hu B'chinas Chesed Gevura? The Or Hu B'chinas Gevura. Or is Gevura. Ki tevoi la'alais l'maylo v'listalik ma'akeli. Why? Because the teva of Or is not hispashtus. It's the opposite. The teva of Or is dveikus. The teva of Or is aliyah. It's dveikus. It's ayin. Its mucker is nirgish within it, and therefore its whole teva, the whole teva of Or is histalkus. That's what Or is. Well, you have a whole Seder Shtalshalis based on the concept of Hashpah. How does this match or jibe with so much Chassidus that we learn, that we talk about the or a Mamale and or a Soivev, and this kind of Espashtus, and that kind of Espashtus, and this kind of Gilui, and that kind of Gilui Akav, Gilui Igul Agodel. It's all Gilui. Gilui by definition is meaningful only if there's a recipient. There's no such thing as Gilui if there is no one there to receive the Gilui. That's not Gilui, that's a Helam. So how does this concept of Or fit with the Gilui? Where does Or, given that this is true, that the Teva of Or is Dveikus, the Teva of Or is Aliyah, how does it fit with every other thing we know about Chassidus? Where does it get its Hispashtus from? How do we speak of even Or Kodim et Simsim? There's Etzem Or and there's Hispashtus Or. Hispashtus means Hispashtus. Where does it come from? How does this match with what we're talking about now, that the nature of Or is Dveikus? Two questions here. First of all, how is that? Actually, that's second of all. First of all, why is it that way? Why is the nature of Or Dveikus? Well, we could come up with some answers. It's because it's ayin be'etzem, because the shorish is nirgish, whatever. It's teva. It's the teva of Or to be dovik b'makarei. It's teva. What is teva? Teva means its nature. What is nature? Nature is something which is ma'ila matam v'das. That is what Or is. It's important for us to focus on this, Rabbi Sai, because we tend to put or together with the or that we see. Or is always in the getter of hispashtus, or illuminates. We talk about or lighting up the world with the light of this and lighting up the world with the light of that. All true and all real, and it all happens. But it requires something besides the or for the or to actually be mispajed. And this is where chesed, this is where the real chesed comes into play. Nature of or is gevura. A flame, lamoshal, is gevura. A flame is constantly seeking to detach from its wick and to seek nullity and unity in its shorsh l'mayla and eish hayusaidi l'mayla. That is the nature of or. That is the nature of eish. Mind you, or and eish not exactly the same metaphor, but it's good enough for us right now. So if that's the case, well, how come every woman over 3 should light Shabbos candles, bringing the light of this and the light of that and the light of this, and we're constantly illuminating and bringing in light, and we are. It's true. We're doing so largely because of the influence of Kalim. Dava Keli, hu b'chinas chesed. Keli is chesed. Sha'al yedei nechel zahor. V'nimshach lamata. Because of Kalim, there's something for the or to attach to draw down lamata. V'chol hamshacha v'agilui hu b'chinas chesed. Anything that's in a getter of gilui and a getter of hamshacha is chesed, because that is giving. What is gilui? It means that someone is receiving. There is an influence, there's a life force, there's a holiness. Call it what you like. It could be or of seichel, it could be or of midas, could be or of elokus, whatever it is. There is someone to benefit from it, there's someone to receive it, there's someone to grow from it, there is someone to be healed by it. It's a gift. Or is pajut a gift. And therefore, or is meaningful, and it acquires the gift quality only when it's mispajit. But by itself, it is not mispajit. By itself, it's in a state of dveikus, it's a state of li, it's in a state of helam, essentially. So it's the keli, which is really as the chesed property to or. What about or for which there are no kalim? What about, we talk about or, this is very nice when we're talking about or seder shtalshalis, we have orders of kalim, spheres. Mind you, I've yet to hear a convincing definition of the word sphere. I've heard 3 or 4 of them, but spheres are artists v'kalim. What about or kodim et simsum? What about his spashtus or? So no, wait, there's no kalim anymore yet. There's hu v'shmoy echad. Let's put it that way, or hu echad v'shmoy echad. Better yet, there's atzma saying soif. There's his spashtus. Later on down the line, we have all our pajut. We got simsum, good and well. But right now, you got hu v'shmoy. Shmoy is, what is it? It's or. It's pajut or ein soif. There's a whole arichas and samech vav on this. So what? How comes? What do you mean? Etzem v'hispashtus. First of all, etzem v'hispashtus is a whole union by itself. But what means hispashtus or? What means or? What is the meaning? What is this? How can there be such a thing? Kodim et simsum. First of all, there's nobody to receive it. Number one. Number two, how can it be in a quality that could be called or by definition is something that comes to gilui, something that's revealed? So the fact of the matter is, the Baruch said, there's spheres kodim et simsum. This is a great chiddush of the Alter Rebbe, that kodim et simsum, that all the Sifrei Kabbalah say there are no spheres kodim et simsum, and there aren't, but there are. There's spheres Saint Kates. In accordance with the or, that's the kind of oisius or kalim or levushim. You can use many, many words, but there has to be some dimension of something, the quality of which is hamshacha, the quality of which is urida, in order for the or to be in a getter of hispashtus. And therefore, even or kodim et simsum, there's not even a whiff, not even an imagination of spheres or kalim. There are spheres Ein Kates. The or is Ein Kates, it's or Ein Soif after all, and therefore the spheres reflect the nature of the or that is being mispajed. So whenever we talk of or in any sense whatsoever, there's always another dimension. The or is dependent, in a sense, on something called kalim. Again, it goes by many, many different names. It goes by the name kalim, it goes by the name oisius, depends upon the context. So the real, what brings about the chesed is the kalim, not the or by itself. So that's why we go back to Toyu and Tikkun. Pardon?
It's not chesed alone.
It's not chesed alone, but in the dimension of or, which is mispajut, what makes or chesed is the fact that it's drawn. It's the property, it's the quality that makes it move toward you, and that quality that makes it move toward you is the keli. If it did not move toward you, if it were simply or, it would be miyuchad with its makar, and that's it.
So you can't have an or without a keli, you're saying?
You can't have an or without something.
So you can't have or without keli?
You cannot have or without a dimension of which keli partakes.
Okay, so what makes it and not etzem?
I'm sorry?
What makes it and not etzem?
Because it is there is gilui if it has what to be attached to, if it has what to ride with. It's certainly gilui. It's not. That's the whole point.
Wherever you have ur, there's kalim.
Wherever you have or, there are oisius or kalim or something.
Yeah.
There has to be.
It has to be so.
Okay.
And how would you differentiate between the ur part and the keli part? If ur is not gilui, if ur is just
okay. This is by itself as a whole story. But the higher you are, let's say or kredim etzimtzum, it's or, it's pajat or. We talk about sphere saying case. The Alter Rebbe talks about sphere saying kates. Doesn't mean that in case there's just no end of the spheres. It means each sphere itself is saying kates. The sphere is lefi erech, the quality of the or. So there, the ikar, what is nirgish is or. Lamashal seichel machshav and dibur. A person has an original idea. Wow. A great idea, or a light goes on in your head. Some real neat, if you ever had to write something or give a talk or something, what am I going to talk about? All of a sudden, bang! Oh, what a wonderful idea! Within 3 seconds, you got the whole thing. That's very much or. That's or. Then it comes into machshava, and say, yeah, but what am I going to actually say? Then it comes into pratim, starts taking on oisius. And then it goes from machshava to machshava shedibur. Yes, so those are the pratim. That's what it is. How am I going to give it over? What am I going to say? Now the oisius become very emphatic. So what is happening as the or becomes less and less, the oisius become more and more. It's an inverse relationship. There's oisius in that original flash of chachma. If there weren't, there'd be no original flash. But the oisius are bittul mitzias to the or. They're enough that the or can be mispajat. But they do not define the or. They do not contain the or, and they do not particularize the or. That's why chokhmah is pajat. As you go into, let's say, bina, now the oisius become very much more emphatic, and as the oisius become more emphatic, the or becomes less intense. Now it's a matter of oisius. Comes in a dibur, it's 90% oisius, 10% or. So there's this inverse relationship between the artist and kalim, but there's always artist for kalim. The difference is the bittul of the kalim to the or, but there's got to always be artist for kalim. Otherwise, nothing works. Otherwise, you don't have anything. Are we okay? Yeah, makes sense. We're going to see. I hope. Yeah.
Normally, you have you have chesed and gevura, and tiferes.
No, you're talking about spheres. We're not talking about spheres. We're talking about generalities. The generality of chesed is that it gives. The generality of gevura is that it withholds. That's all we mean right now. We're not talking about particulars.
What I was trying to say, if you start with etzem,
Yeah.
you agree that you started with etzem without any ur. At a certain point, there was only etzem. The minute that ur is born, which is an extension, which is some kind of, it's array, just like we use the term ur when we're talking about gilui kuz.
Yeah.
So by definition, you're involving gilui. You could say kalim helped the gilui. Without the kalim, there's no really. But how could you say ur is not gilui?
It is gilui. It is gilui, but it is a gilui.
That makes the chesed. The minute it's gilui.
No, because the nature of or is not gilui. The nature of or is dveikus.
So it could lose the title gilui because of that.
It could lose the title gilui because of that. Etzem is heder hispashtus. Where does the hispashtus come from? Look, this is a different.
Exactly.
Wait. This is a subject that's dealt with in the second chelik of Ayin Beis at length with the whole concept of gilui helem etzem hispashtus. Let's stick with what we got here right now. We can talk about it later.
I think he's missing something which might be explained with the metaphor of the light, of the candle. You see at the same time the flame holding on to the wick.
Yeah.
The same time that it's striving to go up,
Yeah.
yet it's illuminating at the same time.
Because it's stuck. It's
So
stuck.
that's the idea. So it's
But-
not,
but-
it's not
but-
the or does not illuminate.
but-
It
but-
illuminates,
but-
but only
wait,
when it's holding on to the wick.
There are also what you're doing is a mixed metaphor. You're mixing two mashalim. There's a mashal of Aish. Aish is not or. And there's a mashal of or is not Aish. So we're going to get to the wicked. We're going to get to all these things. Let's see what the Rebbe's got to say before we. Ukamai, al derech mashal, for example, al derech mashal. So the Rebbe's going to supply some mashal. Is going to make us all very happy. Ba'adam lamata, hanefesh teva la'alois lamayla. So this is a nice metaphor for Iris v'Kalim. The Kalim is the guf, the nefesh is or, at least in this particular metaphor, in this particular mashal. Kamosh kosav rishvi shall heves yud k, the flaming intensity of fire, the flame of Hashem, of yud k. Ukamai lahav she'oila l'mayla. Here's your flame mashal. Oila l'mayla. Kamai kein hanefesh hu tomid b'chinas ha'lah. The same way the nefesh is in a constant state of aliyah. Why? Because the nefesh is not chesed, it's gevura be'etzem. What does the nefesh want? What does the nefesh really want? It wants to be included within its source the same way the flame of the candle yearns to be included within its source, l'mayla, eish yisari l'mayla, even though, as it points out in Tanya, even though it will lose its mitzias completely, not exactly completely, but it will lose its mitzias, it will become bittul to the sharsh, but that's what it wants. Why? What's Tanya say? It's its teva. That's its teva. Reminding us, we are not talking about logical categories here. We are peppering these inyanim with mashalim so we can get some idea of how it operates at least. We don't know what or is, but we know how it behaves. Or we can think of or as the nefesh. In the case of the nefesh, the nature of the nefesh, the teva of the nefesh, is to ascend l'mayla. It is not to be mamshech lamata. For a nefesh to be mamshech lamata and associate with the guf gashmi is a pella. It's what's called mafli lasois. It's not normal. It's a miracle. B'chinas halah rak shebal korcha hi neches beguf lachar yusay. But so it's stuck. Gets nailed down to the guf, and once it's in the guf, so it operates through the guf, which is the whole point. Ukiyadu shahanefesh ein ratzonei lichnas b'haguf. The neshama does not have a ratzain to come into a guf. Kiu bal korcha. It is forced. It is forced to come into a guf. Why? Because that's not its nature. Its nature, like or, is aliyah. To come into a guf is lahefech. It's to, not only is it not aliyah, it's yurida, and it's yurida acher yurida until it actually associates with the guf gashmi. This is an incredible contradiction or incredible antithesis to the nature of the nefesh itself. By nature, by teva, it's in a state of aliyah. I have to make a little comment here, though, because we have to be careful. It says, loy b'rotzan. It doesn't mean, so how does a nefesh come into a guf? Say, bal korcha ato chai. But we have to understand what the forcing is, because it cannot be a negative forcing. The way we think of forcing is saying, okay, nefesh, you like it or not, that's where you're going, and that's what's going to happen to you. It's pushed. That's not the case at all. It is forced. It's forced to go against its nature. How is it forced to go against its nature? It's forced to go against its nature by being given an offer, by being made an offer that is just absolutely can't refuse, despite the fact that its very essence doesn't want to go down there. But the possibilities of what it can gain by going and being associated with the guf are such that it will overcome its own ratzon. It's an unnatural thing. You know, any you guys ever been in a sewer? Anyone ever been in a sewer? I worked for the Department of Public Works in Holyoke. I have been in a sewer. That is, I would never go in there in a million years if I didn't have to. Unless someone said, you know something, in that sewer there's a chest of gold coins which will support you and your whole community forever. You go. And you go with a song. As despicable, as contrary as it is to your teva, as much as you don't want to go, as much as every fiber of your being, it is contrary to what you are as a breathing, living human being who likes to stay upstairs in the fresh air and the light, you would go against your teva, you would go willingly. They wouldn't have to stick a gun to your head. You may not even go if they would stick a gun to your head. But to be able to do that kind of good, to be able to accomplish those sorts of things, you go and you go b'simcha. The neshama, by having an opportunity, nefesh having an opportunity of relating with to a guf gashmi, we'll see later on, because the shorsh of the guf is the shorsh of kalim, higher than the shorsh of oros. That's why kalim have the power of being mamshech oros. If they didn't have a shorsh which is higher, they would not attract oros. But they attract oros, and they're mamshech oros. In the same way, the lack of ratzon is not a ratzon, is not a matter of kavana. It's a matter of the essential nature of or is not a yurida lamata. It's a liya lamaila. But given this unusual, incredible circumstance, miraculous circumstance of a guf in which the sharsh of the guf is atzmistic, the or will go and it will go. The neshama will go and it will go happily. But given the fact that the guf and the neshama are totally one hefech the other, this is teva is aliyah, teva is bittul, the teva is dveikus. Here the teva is yurida, the teva is mitzias. Okay, the teva is yeshus. I mean, that's like making a marriage between fire and water. And therefore, it's miraculous. Life is pajut miraculous. People don't realize. You come out of the bathroom. It's the most incredibly Hasidic opportunity you have during the entire day. Okay, because you get to say this amazing bracha, which is the truth of this yichud of Gashmis and Ruchnis, which is totally inexplicable. Al yedei koyach hashlishi, so the guf and the neshama, soif kol soif, are able to make a chibur. To such an extent, you can't tell where the or begins and the keli ends. We know a person is a living body. There's living flesh. You can't say ad kan is nefesh and from there on is guf. Up to here is or and from there on is keli. The yichud is a yichud atzmi, a yichud pnimi. It's a gvaldik. That a pile of chemicals, a piece of meat, should live from panemius, from or within is a remarkable thing. So to make that kind of a chibur is not normal, it's not natural. It's a miracle, and it occurs not by the or alone, by the keli alone, but the koyach hashlishi amachaver. The koyach hashlishi is the Rabbanu Shloim, who supersedes chesed and supersedes gvura, and the or of etzem is what causes a chibur between the nefesh and guf and causes them to be a living being. You're looking for a miracle. All you have to do is look in the mirror. This is the inyan of mafli lasais. This is no joke. There's a hiskashus, but a hiskashus atzmi between gashmius and ruchnius. Everyone's familiar with this. This concept is brought in many Maimarim Chassidus. This is the inyan of the creation of Adam. Shahagufa hanefesh shnei hepchim. The body and the soul are two completely different things. Is explained elsewhere in a variety of Maimarim. The gam bal chai bitzviyunen nivru. Well, what about a squirrel? What about a monkey? They were created as a single entity. The guf is shaykh to the kind of nefesh that they have, and the nefesh is shaykh to the kind of guf that they have, and they were created as living creatures. When the Rabbanu Shloim created the whole realm of animal life, the animals appeared as living animals. The only distinction, the only exception to that rule is Adam. Adam is the only nivra, on the one hand, which is created of a pile of chemicals, and the other hand has a ruach, which is beyond anything having to do with physicality, and this is the fusion of nefesh v'guf. This is only true of Adam. Of Adam it is said, he blew into him nishmas chaim. Sounds like a little bit poetic license. Sounds like a nice metaphor. You talk to someone who's not engaged in Chassidus, that's what it looks like. But it required neficha. Neficha has two aspects to it. One is the neficha, when one is, everyone's familiar with the Zohar, when one exhales with force, when the very panemius of the individual, the very life force of the person is exhaled. That's number one. But number two, there's got to be an exhaler. And it's the exhaler who is responsible ultimately for the chibur of nefesh v'guf. And this is what the Rebbe says. Since Adam began his career as a goylem made out of earth, yesh loimer demand nafach shuhu b'chinas or ein soif. Who is demand nafach? Not the neficha itself. The neficha itself is the extension, the hispashtus of atzmus, which becomes the nefesh adam. But who's the breather in this case? It's atzmus or ein soif. It's or ein soif. Shalamayla b'chinas chachma, which is higher than chachma, with which we associate the panemius, the spiritual panemius of Adam. Shazehu b'chinas teichu pneumiusai. This is the name of chachma. Shemisham makar haneshama. From there is the makar of the neshama. K'may shekosov is explained in Tanya and elsewhere. V'hu machaver b'chinas nefesh v'guf. It's the Baal Neficha who is responsible for the chibur of nefesh and guf. Okay, not just he provides the nefesh, but the etzem is responsible for the chibur. Therefore, physical life cannot be understood. It cannot be explained. It is a nace that goes beyond any nace that you can possibly come across anywhere else. K'shemar Razal, Bal Korchat Aton Neitzer, it's the Chachamim say, against your will, you were formed. V'gam acher shenoiled. Even after the, all right, so I can understand that. And Neshama is trembling to come the many Yeridas with the Parsais and the what else to ultimately associate with the Guf Gashmi. It's like, it's an incredibly difficult thing. But even after the, all right, so here I am. So Saif Kol Saif, it worked. I was born, here I am, hello. Now everything is fine, everything's good. Neshama and Guf are working fine together. No. Omru, Baal Korcha Atochai, against your will you live. This is a tension in a person, particularly in a Jew, specifically in a Jew. Every single second of life there's a tension between Neshama and Guf. And the idea is to fuse that tension and to use that tension, to use the power of Aliyah of the Neshama, the Ratzai of the Neshama, and fuse it with the shayv of the guf to produce what only God Almighty could produce, and what God Almighty gave us the power to produce through our avodah. V'gam sham gam kein bal korcha atameis. I said, wait a minute. Also says, against your will you die, so it must mean that they get comfortable with each other. Yesh Loimer says in Chassidus Dezeu la'acher shenizbar haguf al yedei hanefesh. Yeah, that's true. Bal korcha atameis. For someone who has fulfilled the avodah of birurim and who has the fabulous potential of the guf, has been brought to realization through avodah, such that the neshama and the guf are now a single unity. They're all, each are fulfilling the purpose of the Rebbeinu Shalom B'tachlis. And in such a circumstance, that is perfection itself. It's the reason the world was created. It's the reason we were created. We ourselves will feel this in Zman Tchiyah. Zman Tchiyah. We are now talking in terms of the neshama animating a guf. Zman Tchiyah, that's not natural, that's not normal. The normal thing is where the guf will animate the neshama, because the shorsh of the guf, like the shorsh of kalim, like the shorsh of gvul, is higher than the shorsh of bli gvul, because the tachlis ultimately is dir b'tachtoinim. So Baal Korcha Atomeis, in the case of a tzaddik who's fulfilled the avodah of birurim and whose guf is a kodesh HaKodeshim, so for that person, there's no end of it's a Mashiach side for him already. But for the rest of us, not so.
So the statement about Korcha Atomeis is only to tzaddikim?
That's what the Rebbe says. Under such circumstance, the neshama doesn't want to be freed from the guf. Why should it? It's perfection itself. This the guf and neshama, the reason that creates Soif Kol Soif, the ultimate tachlis, the ultimate kavanah of Atzma Ein Soif, should be neshama and guf. That's Zman Tchiyah.
The birur that happens in neshama is after the
neshama requires no birur.
Yeah, but when it says misale al yada, so that happens by Elam Haza or
by Elam Haza, even while within the guf. You know how to put this. A neshama in Gan Eden Elyon, it's very nice, very, very nice. What's it getting? What's the Maila? The Maila is Giluyim. It's Or. The Maila is Or. Level after level, Aliyah after Aliyah, Be'ein Areichem. It's not like Malachim or Oimdim. These are Hayachim. Neshama and Gan Eden are just inundated with Or at a higher level, constantly growing, constantly elevating, constantly going higher and higher and higher. Beautiful. There's only one problem: you never get there. Why do you never get there? Because it's Ein Soif. So if someone runs a mile toward a point that's infinitely far out in space, and someone else runs 1,000 miles toward the point that's infinitely far out in space, they're both the same distance from the point out in space. They haven't gone anywhere because it's infinite. You want etzem, the irony, the paradox, the holy paradox. You want etzem, you don't go up. Those are aliyahs in or, aliyahs in nefashos, neshamas, aliyahs in Gan Eden. You want etzem, you come down to the ultimate in Hagbolah, the ultimate in Metzias, because that's the tachlis for creation. You want etzem, only found here. It's only found down here. That's why every minute of Torah and mitzvahs in this world, I mean, a neshama and Gan Eden would give everything, anything and everything for another minute of life in this world. Because here, the relationship of the neshama to the guf is offering etzem. It's offering a possibility in partnership with the neshama to achieve etzem. Now, the neshama by itself can't do this. The guf by itself can't do it. It's got to be a partnership. So there are many, many dimensions to this. The partnership is not a natural one. It has to be brought about by a miracle. Ruchnius and Gashmius don't naturally fuse by any stretch of the imagination. But once we're in this amazing situation where they are fused and they can interact with each other in such an intimate way, sky's the limit. And therefore, everything's here. The whole thing is here. When did we begin this? Oh, we got time. Do we? Do we have time? Okay. Delacher habir hanefesh makabel umasala al yedei al yoda. So once the beer is complete, and the neshama is elevated and receiving from basically what the guf has to offer, then you're here. That's perfection. Ulfiza moving dahanefesh ikra b'chinas halah. It's understood then that the nature of the ikar of the nefesh ikrei b'b'chin, the essence of the neshama is aliyah. V'haguf tevoy leyored lamata. The nature of the guf is yurida lamata. You can put both of these things together, you get havayu elakim, if you do your birurim. Ruach ha'odem ha'oila al hi lamayla. The ruach of Odom, which ascends l'mayla, is nefesh elikis. Ruach HaBehema hayored lamata ba'aretz. The Ruach HaBehema descends mamish into the earth. So again, the impression that we have, one is good and one isn't. On the contrary, they're both halves of the same excellence. Each one's got something the other doesn't have. V'al yedei haguf dafka mizgalim koyches hanefesh. It's only through the guf that you can reveal the koyches hanefesh. You cannot reveal the koyach of chesed or the koyach of rachamim in the nefesh unless you have a hand that you can put into a pocket, which you also have, in which there's some money that you can give. In order for a koyach to come to poil, you need a levush, and the levush in this case is the guf. The guf is the instrument through which atzmas can be achieved, and through which the koyches nefesh can reach a state from koyach to poil. V'nimtza b'chinas nefesh v'guf heim shnei hepchim. Even so, we find that the neshama and the guf are two opposites, absolute opposites. Zeh b'halav, zeh b'hamshacha. This one is in a state of aliyah. This one is in a state of hamshacha. U'kamaykein ba'avoda. The same thing is the case in avoda. Hari avodas haneshama mitzad atzma hi lichlul the nature of the neshama, the avodah of the neshama is ascent. The avodah of the neshama is bittul. The avodah of the neshama is dveikus. You look through kuntras ha'avodah, kuntras ha'tefillah, you will see that avodah requires two tenuas. There's an avodah tenua of the nefesh, and this is brought in Tanya as well, that the avodah should be of such a nature, of such an intensity, that the sweetness of elukus is perceived taka in the neshama, and the avodah with the guf should be such that the bittul of the guf and the absolute subjugation of the guf and the desire of the guf to serve should be poil in it. Two different tenuas in avodah. So this is the case in the case of the avodah, which relates specifically to neshama b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, with all your nefesh. Afilu noitel es nafshecha v'zeu kol chefza umagmosa lichlol b'chinas orein soif. With all of your nefesh, it means that your whole desire and yearning, the whole desire and yearning of the nefesh, is to be included and united with orein soif. So that's the avodah mitzad haneshama. The avodah mitzad haguf hu b'chinas b'chol levavcha. It's with all your heart. Hu b'chinas bittul hayesh la'ayin. This is the inyan of the bittul of yesh to ayin.
Why is it called avodah? Sorry, why is it called avodah haneshama? Avodah implies you think that it's doing something. If it sounds like what's it doing to go back to the source?
It's very, very far from the source, and it requires a tremendous yigi and a tremendous avodah to achieve these aliyahs. It's stuck. Don't forget, a neshama in Gan Eden doesn't have this problem. But a neshama, which is nailed down to a guf, in Tanya, I forget which parak it is, talks about a tzaddik gomer. Someone will remind me of the parak. A tzaddik gomer who serves Hashem with ahava b'tainugim, bittul b'tachlis, a tzaddik v'toiv loy. Tzaddik v'toiv loy. But he's in the guf. That his ahava is already limited. It's a dimiun compared to what it would be without that guf. And this is someone who's already completed his avodah biurim. But the mere fact that there's a tunua hefkes is enough to require tremendous yigia on behalf of that neshama to achieve dveikus. I don't think we have to worry about that too much, but it's something we should know about it anyway.
It says there the neshama has to come on. Tzaddik has to come on to mitzvahs b'poil.
Even the tzaddik, yeah, exactly. It's only through mitzvahs b'poil that it's going to work. The whole point of the guf is not bittul b'mitzias. The whole point of the guf is not dveikus. The point of the guf is that precious entity which allows us not to fulfill our will. Our will, let's say, is the will of the neshama, which is dveikus, but to fulfill the Rabbanu Shloim's will. Not that we go up there, but rather that we bring him down here, and that can only be done through guf, the neshama through the intermediacy of the guf. But the guf has to be bittul to such a thing. It's not normal for a guf to want to do these things. It requires a tremendous avodah. That much we understand. Ki im b'chinas yesh u bittul k'mosh kos mokom acher. V'chol zeh mipnei shaha nefesh hi chelik elokam emal mamish. The whole essence of the nefesh is chelik elokam emal mamish. It's an interesting term for many reasons, not the least of which is up till now we've been talking about the neshama or the nefesh in terms of or. Well, there's no chelik in or, right? You don't talk about a chelik. When you talk about, you talk about a ha'ara, so it's a ha'ara, and the concept of ha'ara is applicable as well. The metaphor, there are three metaphors in Tanya, two major ones for the neshama. One is the inyan of the ficha, which is a continuum, which is or. Or is always miyuchad with a ma'or. Or is never anything other than or. No matter how far or extends from its charge, no matter how far it extends from its source, it remains or. It can be mitzumtzum, it can be maluvish and things, but it never becomes anything other than or, and therefore there's a panimia, or panimia, which is a constant connection between atzma ein soif and the individual. But there's another mashal for the neshama, an extremely important mashal, is the inyan of moyach ha'av, tippus moyach ha'av. And in the case of moyach ha'av, the mashal is a very interesting one because it's not simply a ha'ara from an etzem. It's an atzmi itself. Tippus mad becomes literally the individual himself, including his moyach. So even as he is an individual, here his father's over here and he's over here and he's off walking by himself, not a ha'ara, he's not bound to, he may not even be visibly or in any way intentionally related to his father. But he's a clone of his father. He's an inyan atzmi from his father. So you need both. You need the chalik, the implication being that we are not simply a ha'ara, but without the ha'ara, the implication could be that we're davar nivdal, the davar bifnei asma, which is not the case either. So we have both milas in this mashal. Chalik is an extremely important part of it. Nitzutz is not a har. Nitzutz is a nitzutz. A har, you have a huge bonfire, and the or is intense, and it extends for miles and miles and miles. What happens when the bonfire goes out? Well, at least we've got the or that came out so far. You don't have anything because the or is ayin be'etzem. There is no or except that it's davik b'makar, and it's constantly generated by its source. But if you poke around in the ashes, you're going to find a spark or a little brand of a stick of something. You start a whole other fire. So both Misholim are critical here. Nimshach Achrei ha'avuka, the spark which is drawn after the avuka. K'maykein ha'nefesh ha'elikis, nimshach Achrei elikus. Likewise, the nefesh ha'elikis, whether you want to think of it in terms of neficha, or whether you want to think of it in terms of a nitzutz, so it's still, the nature is dveikus, the nature is cleaving and yearning for its source. B'chinas orein soif. Ach, you do with the mitzias v'eshavus ha'guf, and b'chinas orein soif. However, the mitzias, the creation of the body, from Orein Soif, who b'derech bri. Oh, did I miss something here? Oh no, yeah, I did. Of course, stop me. Okay, I told you I make mistakes. You got to stop me. V'hagam mimcha hakoil. From you comes everything. So, very nice. The neshama comes from the Beinah Shalom. Very beautiful, very good. The guf, everything. The guf no less than the neshama. There's no einoid milvadoi. Okay, so that's the given. That means everything is a derivative of asmas ein soif. Ksiv degam haguf sharsha b'chinas orein soif. The guf also, it's got its root in orein soif. Ach, you do a demetzias hisavus guf b'chinas orein soif. However, the creation and the metzias of the guf, as it extends from orein soif, hu b'derech bris yesh ma'ayin. It's not gili helam like ha'ara, or it's pashit yesh ma'ayin. Yesh ma'ayin means it comes in a way of havdalah. It becomes an autonomous being seemingly divorced from its source. That's a koyach etzem, incidentally. Shehu b'chinas helam v'hester habari ma'anivra. This is the concealment of the bari from the nivra, the creation from the nivra. Rak behelam yesh b'gufayis v'kelim b'chinas atzmius orein soif b'sharshim. Okay, this, something. I think we're going to end here.
So this concept would the fact that there's a helam habeir me'anivra, this would explain its teva to be rated lamato.
It's the fact that the process is yesh ma'ayin would explain that. It's a yesh. Neshama's not a yesh.
Right. In other words, the fact that the neshama feels elokus, so that's why it wants to go up and to be niflal in elokus.
No, that's not wrong, but it's not the whole thing. It wants to go up the same way, or wants to be niflal in the ma'or. It's teva. Now, the teva does the teva involve a hergish? Yes, but that's not the ikar. It's a consequence.